And we're on the dot at 3 p.m. So we're ready to get started, guys. I just want to tell you that I'm super excited about what we're going to talk about today because so many people who attended last week and where we introduced the whole idea of what it means to manage your life or your time yourself by energy as opposed to time was quite a revelation for a lot of people, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to just make sure that everybody comes away with a whole new idea about themselves. So this week we thought, well, why not take that down a notch and talk about one of the ways in which we can elevate our energy, one of the biggest ways we can actually elevate our energy. Now, I see people are still joining. I know you're probably tearing yourselves away from your 2 to 3 p.m. afternoon meetings. I certainly hope that you've had a moment, and if you haven't, please do so, is grab yourself something to hydrate with, or maybe caffeine, whatever works for you at 3 o'clock. Today, for me, this is green tea. It's been that kind of day. I'm going to tell you about the kind of night I had. So what happened is I was due for an MRI last night, and it was at midnight, and I showed up. And this has everything, by the way, guys, to do with what I'm going to talk about today. So walk in, midnight for me, if you know me well enough, is late. So I walked in, registered. She gave me my wristband. I walk away, go to the room where I'm supposed to wait. He gives me my gown. I go sit in the room with my gown, put my stuff away in the locker. And then suddenly I hear somebody shouting my name in the hallway. And it turns out that he's calling out my name. And I'm like, I don't know what the emergency is. Why is he yelling? And I come out in my gown. I got to picture this, okay? Because there's 4 other people sitting there. And they're all in their gowns, like, looking at you. And he's calling out my name. And I said, hi, that's me. And he says, you're not supposed to be here. You were supposed to be here yesterday. And I took a deep breath because I didn't understand what the yelling was about, like why such a big voice and why do it so publicly. I didn't even understand. But in that moment, even though it was late, it was inconceivable to be awake in a gown, I basically decided, you know what, my sleep is so important to me. And the longer I stay here and stew about this, the worse the night's going to get, because guess what? I actually had to be back there at 3:30 a.m. as well. And so I said, okay, thank you very much. Can you take me tonight? He said, nope, but you can reschedule it. So I get changed. I walk all the way back to the check-in, and I asked her, I said, you checked me in? And she said, yes, I don't know what the problem is. So I said, so give me another time. She gave me 11 p.m. So I'm back in the hospital this evening. And why am I talking about this right now? Because I can tell you that everything about me physically is all about going to bed on time, conserving my energy at night, having sort of the sleep routine, all of those things that went out the door when I went to the hospital last night. And this is what we're going to talk about, is where is it worth quickly, very swiftly calculating in your head, saying, what's my highest value? And my highest value is my rest. And the sooner I get home and I rest for like maybe an hour more, then I can come back. And I did go back at 3:30, very calm, and went ahead with what I don't enjoy very much, which is an MRI. So that's my little story. Hope by this time I haven't bored you and you grabbed your drink. So that's my MRI story. So why am I talking about this? Let me just go ahead and share my screen here. And we can get on to, by the way, today is just like the last 2 weeks, super, super interactive, right? So I want everybody to please participate. And the way you participate in this webinar is that you go to the Q&A and you will see people typing. So whenever I pose a question, I'll be so happy if you can share with us, as well as if there are questions coming up, I will get to the Q&A as I'm presenting. I will keep switching back and forth. The point of the storyline was just this, right? We all have limited time. And the more we tend to measure ourselves by the amount of time we have every day, which we all can attest to, seems to be going faster and faster. It seems like I don't even know how we got to December. It feels like I just rung in the new year in January. So time appears in our minds to be going faster. And that just kind of tells you how much more is being put on our plate to be done in 24 hours. And so instead, this beautiful quote by Jim Lohr that I even shared last week, which was very well received, is, you will be measured by how much energy you will invest in the time we have. So when you start thinking about dealing with your life in terms of energy as opposed to finite time, a lot of things will start to change in terms of how you choose to make decisions and choices about what you do and say every single day. So, why are you here today? In a minute, I'm going to ask you why you are here today. I'll tell you that last week, a bunch of people shared with me why they were there to learn about energy management. Here are some of the things that are going on in a lot of people's life right now. You may relate to some of this. This is sort of a day-to-day experience that people are having. You think about a friend of yours or yourself, and you see how people are feeling like disconnected from people they used to care about, or not feeling like they have enough energy to do what they want, or putting in all their energy in the workplace and still feeling like they're not seen and heard, not feeling like they're making an impact. And the others who are struggling is, in long-term relationships, because let's just face it, marriage and long-term relationships is work, right? And so a lot of people are feeling that exhaustion even more. And we're going to talk about that bandwidth of relationships. So I'm going to stop sharing right now, and I just would like to hear from you in the Q&A if you could share with me. Maybe you can share with me and tell me what is it that you are experiencing that led you to come to this webinar? What was it that inspired you to say, you know what, I want to go learn about this? Maybe there's something to this, or something that you're experiencing that you would like to see could perhaps be addressed with relation to energy management. Let's just hear from you here. Anxiety. I'll say it, I'm feeling anxiety lately. High levels of burnout. Thank you. Burnout is something we're going to talk about today, for sure. Overwhelm, right? So much to do, so much to perform for, so many people to perform for. So that in itself invites the anxiety, stress. A little bit, we'll get under some of these words: burnout, stress, overwhelm, because what we're going to talk about is, how it is that we reframe that, and where is this coming from? Where is this idea of stress and anxiety coming from? A relationship with my old school traditional dad. Old school traditional dads. Everybody put your hand up. Who's got an old school traditional dad? Yep. It doesn't even matter how young or old you are. Dad's always old school. Thank you. All right. So yes. So, it could be relationships, and it can be work, and it can be family, whatever the source is, the things that have brought you here today are really related to the amount of energy that you feel and feel that you have control over. So let's come back and talk about this a little bit more. So while this is happening to people on the ground, here's what's happening at a macro level. And what do I mean by macro level? Everywhere you look around, you can look at any stats you want. You can look at any article in the present day, and they're talking about human sustainability. If you haven't looked that up, please do. We talk about it a lot here. But these are some of the things that people are experiencing that are almost like at an epidemic level. Like it's being experienced collectively, right? The idea of addiction, or the idea of people losing their jobs, especially the reskilling and upskilling of roles because of the advent of AI. People's roles becoming redundant. Loneliness and disconnectedness is definitely an epidemic. Lots of stats on that. People showing emotional volatility more so than ever. Family structures breaking. All of these things cause anxiety, overwhelm, stress, and burnout. But here's the thing. That doesn't mean that this doesn't work the other way around. It could be that because you are anxious, overwhelmed, stressed, that you're inviting emotional volatility and other things into your life. You may get addicted to something because you feel a constant state of overwhelm. So we're seeing this be this sort of two-way thing happening, right? It's not that the anxiety causes this or the other thing causes the anxiety. The point is, and I've gotten beyond this, trying to figure out what's causing what, because what I've realized is the central problem here is that we all are in some level of that ladder of overwhelm, anxiety, stress, burnout. We're somewhere in that ladder. Some of us are dealing with it better than others, and some of us actually are just going down into the place of burnout, which is probably the place you really don't want to be in, and we'll talk about what that looks like. If you're a person who really looks at numbers, and there's numbers everywhere, here's energy depletion numbers. They make you feel depleted just looking at them, right? So almost 50% of our workers across 8 countries today are experiencing burnout. And almost 40 to 60% of our generations that are in the workforce are experiencing burnout by age. And you can see the top 3 professions where this is being felt the most. And on this note, I'm just going to tell you a little story. I'll give you an example, actually. So one of our clients here at Envia, Jane, she came into the program feeling a lot of this. She's a young mother. She's an aspiring emerging leader in the workplace. She's in the technology space. They tend to work night shifts as well, depending on when they're launching new software upgrades, so on. So, there's this sense of the work day just gets a lot longer. You can't quite tell. And then she has 2 young kids who are under the age of 3. And she was holding down, like many people were during COVID, 2 contracts, so 2 full-time jobs with 2 young kids and a marriage and a household and so on. And so she came to us not in the greatest of physical health, definitely experiencing strife at home, starting to show a great deal of emotional volatility to everyone around her. And in order to deal with those 3 things, she had then taken to a form of addiction as well. And that addiction was almost making things much worse. The things you see here in purple, by the way, I didn't point this out before, our past clients have come to us with these particular concerns. So our experience has helped people deal with what you see here in these purple circles. That is sort of typically what a lot of people are dealing with. They may not go as far as addiction, but maybe it leads to a divorce. Maybe it leads to, dissonance with one's children. So the numbers show that this state of burnout is definitely at a global scale. And on the flip side, the irony of it all is that here we are, human skills for the future. If you're going into interviews these days, if people are looking for talent, they are looking more for these human skills than ever before, because the tech has to be driven by humans still. And so showing up with even half of these skills with the kind of burnout epidemic we're looking at has become far more challenging. And if you look at some of these, like I'll just pick one here, for example, negotiation, persuasion. What does that even require? It requires a lot of different skills, but what it really does require is a great deal of presence and capacity and empathy. And so what I started telling people is that these skills are not about you developing the skills. You're developing these skills so that you can relate to and elevate others. You'll see the tagline. Some of my slides will have these beautiful taglines. I find I actually use these as sort of inspirations for me. If you like it, please make a note of it. But I always tell myself, I have to optimize myself in order to show up with these skills so that I can transform and help others. So there's this pressure on us, and we have to show up this way. So the thing is that we're not always taught how it is that we are to interact with ourselves. When I was 30, this is the first time this question came into my mind. I was also going through a crisis. I was at the verge of my divorce. And having checked off so many boxes and nodded and done everything I was supposed to do up to that point, I was quite shocked that I was in that situation. As many of us find that those are the greatest moments of evolution that happen is when we fail the greatest and we feel that we have been a failure. So I began to ask myself, what if I could proactively build mental fitness for myself? What if I could build the skills needed to keep me resilient so that when things like this come crashing through the door, I don't feel like I'm dependent on so many things external to myself? And so that was a question I started asking myself back then, which is really what spurred me onto the path I will share with you very quickly here. This very question is the reason we have a lot of our clients come to us. They're asking themselves, and it's such a beautiful thing to say that growth mindset still wants to prevail, even in their deepest points of hardship. Before I go much further, I see many of you here I've not had the pleasure of meeting or speaking to before. So you may say, well, who is this person who's talking to me? Why is she talking about this? What does she know about it? So on the side here, I made a few bullets. You can read them, okay? But what stands out for me here is over and over as I get older, I get asked this question a lot. Where do you get all this energy? And so if you look at some of the things I do, I have been very grateful, and I'm so humbled that in my journey, starting from that point of, having that divorce and moving on, it wasn't like that was the first thing or the first rock that came at me. There was a few more, some of them here as well. Like I've I began to realize that I have to change the way that I manage myself, and I cannot measure by the hour. And so I had to get super clear. And we teach our clients every day to get super clear about making sure they know what they want. They're clear about it, because we cannot put our energy in places that are not aligned with what we want the most. So that's one of the things that we teach in the Aura experience. And so when I was on that journey of, hey, like they didn't teach me this stuff in school, what is it about myself that I need to do to get more resilient? I began with the support of so many teachers and guides and mentors and even business leaders, really, really uncovering 4 other intelligences that I never knew I had. The first was, cognitive intelligence, which is, I'm smart, I'm book smart, I'm not very street smart, but I'm book smart. What am I doing with that IQ to make an impact? Am I making the best possible maximum potential that I have? The second intelligence that I began to look at is, how am I going through changes? Clearly at 30, I wasn't going to go through that change very gracefully, but I began to look into that. I began to look at my own ability to self-regulate. And I began to look at, how am I responding to people? Are people responding well to me, calmly, empathetically? Maybe it's something I'm doing. So that kind of reflection is what, as I studied it and practiced, what really changed was this last part, which is how I was showing up socially. And not just doing things, but also how I was saying things, how I was bringing people together, how I was getting a group of people from point A to point B. Many of you may know my history, career-wise, has been in leading global projects. So I have led large teams through lots of changes. And so the ability to be socially intelligent was paramount, but nobody taught us this in school. So the Aura experience really is, in a nutshell, exactly that. And so we look at mental and emotional stability. We look at, where is this energy being dispensed? Where could it be conserved? I'll bring back the case that I just talked about, the mother that Jane that worked with us. We worked with her for 5 weeks. And I want to tell you that the transformation in her today, if you look at her, she is a person who goes willfully to work and has a smile on her face and doesn't experience social anxiety going into the office, which was one of the things she was feeling. And in order to cope with that, she was relying on her addiction to substances in order to get into the office. Like, she really literally had to prep herself. She no longer does that. She's found a different way to channel her energy and be prepared to go to work. She's changed the way she communicates by absolutely doing one simple thing, which is to listen quietly. And she's built the fortitude to do that through the mindfulness practices that we have taught her, so that she doesn't feel like she has to defend, and she doesn't need to bring all of her past into one moment, or her judgments about a person when she's talking to them. These are the types of things that allow her now to free up that energy that she needs to deal with her children more positively and become a better role model. So I always ask myself, and I ask the people we work with, why do we want to learn this? And for me, I think fulfillment is made of 3 things when we look to be fulfilled. So if you're going through your day every day thinking, I did so much, but I don't feel fulfilled. I go to work, I come back, I have a great family, I have a house, I have all these things, but I don't feel fulfilled. I look for 3 things every night. And at the end of this presentation, I'm actually going to share with you the 6 questions I ask myself. But it helps me figure out, did I do fulfilling stuff? The first is cultivating a life of sustainability, self-sustainability. So making sure that you're making choices in terms of energy that lead you to have capacity every single day, every hour, and enough for the next day and for the months ahead, as well as the big plans you may have for yourself that might be on your bucket list. The second thing is, as human beings, we seek to understand, we seek to be understood. And most of us may be walking around feeling misunderstood, Because you see, we're in a reactive place right now. People are reacting. We feel reactive. There's a lot of misunderstanding. There's not a great deal of propensity to be understood and to understand others. So if I have productive conversations in any one given day where I feel like, yeah, we had this goal and we understood and we got into each other's space and we had a meaningful outcome, that for me is practicing how it is to be understood. And finally, as we go through our journey of life, we want to remain relevant. What does relevant mean? I want to keep my growth journey going. I want to keep learning. As I get older, I have more and more things that I want to learn. There is so much to learn. And so in order to learn the right things that are needed in each stage of life, and that's what we call relevance, is that I'm relevant in this day and age with what I have to offer and what I have to learn. So these things, these three things for me, and maybe for you, there are three other words. That's one of the things we do in our experiences. And what are those three things that make you feel fulfilled? So that is what our flagship program teaches everyone, is to start dealing in the currency of energy. So before I get started, I'm just going to teach you, rather ask if there's any questions. Let me just get back there and see if there's any questions for me here. No, I see more and more descriptions of how we're feeling these days. Okay. I'll come back to you if you have any questions, all right? We'll just go back, and here's where we start talking about today's subject. I'm going to make this very light for you, okay? It's the afternoon. I'm not going to make this heavy. I would ask if you have a paper and pen next to you. There may be some thoughts that come up for you. We're going to be doing an exercise together as well, so you may choose to write as opposed to share. So I recommend that you have something where you can record some of your ideas as you go through this. So some simple ideas. We hear this a lot. There's a leadership crisis everywhere. I know that I've experienced it in corporate. I've worked in 8 different industries. I've been on that journey in different countries, politically, in organizations. Look anywhere you want right now. I'm sure you will all agree there is a leadership crisis. And for me, this is one of the greatest impetuses. Think about those who are leading you in your life every day. And whether you or not you feel they're credible. And if they're not, what that is doing to you every single day. How is that impeding you or elevating you? Because for me, the answer has really been about leading myself. That is how I am coping with this leadership crisis. A lot of leaders don't make sense to me. A lot of the styles that people are using don't make sense to me. In fact, we all know how many leaders we have worked for in the past that could have taken a little, maybe used a little bit of training as it comes to managing people. Leading yourself mentally and emotionally in this time period especially is what is going to give you more capacity. So think about that for yourself. And we're going to come back to what are some of these things that are relevant to you. Here's another idea, and something we've already talked about. When you start to manage energy, when you learn how to do that, you're going to stop feeling dependent on others for your own happiness. There's a state of empowerment that happens, and mostly in the space of being confident and feeling like there's capacity, which leads to many good things, such as productivity, focus, freedom from other people's opinions, things like that. All these things that chew up our energy. The greatest thing is that you suddenly feel ownership for your capacity, as opposed to other people kind of pulling you in multiple directions. This one, not everyone grasps quickly. It took me a while in my training I've been on this journey for a while, but the more and more I have lived it, the more and more this has really been very freeing for me. In certain cultures, this is taught as part of religion. You are made up of the same energy as everything around you. And yes, if you're scientifically inclined, you're going to go, absolutely, we're all atoms and molecules of the same stuff. This is true. But we implement this idea heavily when we teach energy management to our clients. because in feeling this lack of dissonance or less and less of dissonance between yourself and the things around you is where that flow and that sense of belonging starts to happen, where you're able to let things go. So I'm just throwing out these ideas. You can consider them pillars, maybe, of the real frameworks and so on that we leverage in our teaching. But these are some of the core ideas that we want to grasp when we're teaching this stuff. So here's a new one. Your perception that you are different, that you're separate of others, that you are better than others, that we are right versus wrong. The thought processes that kick in that tell us that, we have a complaint or some kind of grievance at any time um, throughout the day is from a sense of feeling that something's not right for me, something I'm better at something. I need to make some kind of change in my life because I see myself different. And that sense of my preferences, my likes, my dislikes, and so on, that list can get pretty long. And the more we live by that list, the more we create this tunnel for ourselves where we're in this state of dissonance and discontentment. This is a very important pillar, our own perception and managing our perception. And the more dissonance you have within yourself and with others, the more energy you're consuming, which leaves less energy for what you really want to do and do well. Right? It's not just, I want to do this. It's just that I really want to excel in it. Well, that's going to need a certain amount of energy. So how do you know all this stuff? How do you know what your perception is of things, how limiting it is, how much dissonance it's causing you? Well, one of the ways is the way we just discussed, which is it's showing on you, perhaps physically. It's showing the stress, the burnout, that your body kind of shutting down, your mind kind of getting overwhelmed, confused. These are some of the ways this is showing up. But there's a practice of awareness. And here's where we come into the main topic of what is awareness. So let's just talk about this very simply. On the left side of this are a bunch of words. And I'll walk you through this. So awareness is the very first place we start. Because awareness of something is what creates a perception of something. Perception is caused by many things. Perception is caused by our history, things that, we were conditioned to think and feel from past experiences, but there is an awareness that something is happening. Like I will say, this is green. That's my awareness. At its more primal level, I can be like, yeah, so it's green. But maybe, I associate green with, I don't know, a green traffic signal that I skipped one time and almost got into an accident. Suddenly green has a different connotation to me. So it affects our perception. And that perception, depending on how narrow or broad it is, coupled with emotion, again, from our past, is going to lead to an action of some kind. It'll be the words you say, it'll be the fact that you threw something, or it could be a kind act that it's not all negative. It's just, it decides which way you go. And then you create an impact from that. And the more you do that, you start to develop some sense of intuition. Because experience of doing one thing over and over again will build your second brain, which is your gut brain. You will start to build a stronger intuition about certain things. I put this here because I wanted to walk you through this, a very simple way to look at where awareness comes in. Now think about every single day, how much energy is being expended on being aware of so many different things. So our awareness creates a perceived reality. So if my reality is this narrow because this is all I'm conditioned to see and do and act with, that's going to create a certain type of energy. However, I would argue with you that what if you could look at energy first and work backwards? And that's essentially being able to play with energy in a way that you choose your perception, you choose your emotion, you choose your action, you choose the impact it's going to have, and thus you build intuition. So a lot of our clients who come into the aura experience, like myself, at 30, stuff happened. I had a reality in my head, and then I expended all this energy And I also took in a lot of negative energy. But the minute I started playing with that and understanding its potential, I began to understand that I can play this backwards. On the right side of this screen, nothing very overwhelming. Something that I teach in great detail in our experience is understanding that our physical state, your skin, your body, is if you perceive yourself as being just physical in your form, that's very limiting. But that there are many layers to you, and this ability to move in and out and be aware of these different energies that reside outside of our physical is a great power to have when we are choosing our responses and our actions. So we're going to now tie awareness to energy. Okay, so we talked about awareness and we've talked a bit about energy. When we talked about awareness, when we talked about awareness last week, we made it very, very simple. Okay, today we're going to take a little bit bigger step. We talked about peripheral, sensory, and self. Peripheral being, you know what, ouch, this is hot, I'm going to move myself away. Sensory, very unconscious, right? We all have that ability. But the idea of self-awareness, which we've all heard about, you need to be more self-aware, you need to practice more self-awareness. Here are some ways to get self-aware. We hear this word a lot. And if you're like me, I didn't hear this word till I got into the workplace and I began to, bump into things. And then I was like, okay, there's something I need to learn, right? So there's the self-awareness. And very quickly, what is that? It's our ability to read ourselves, what we feel, what we think. And when we can do that, maybe we can observe ourselves and maybe we can actually release things that we know don't need to stay in our present moment. And then maybe we have more energy to activate in a different way. And that's what aura stands for. But when we take it to the next level and we say, well, that's supposed to let you accept others, accept how other people feel differently, accept a changing circumstance. That's where it gets hard. For many of us, that's the hard step. And if we can get past that, then there is the skill of being able to choose consciously as opposed to unconsciously. So let's do an exercise. I'm going to stop sharing right now. And I would love it if you could just work with me here, or let's see if you feel like, no, I think I want to work on this myself. Think about a situation right now in your life that you are contending with that seems to drain your energy. So just identify one situation. It may be a person or some sort of nuance in places that you go to every day, like your workplace or home or community. Just pick one. And then draw a circle, and in it, your first circle is going to be about yourself. In that situation that you've identified, what is it, do you feel that you have understood of yourself? So what is it in that situation that you see of yourself? What are the qualities, characteristics that you're noticing about yourself in that situation? And as I said, feel free to share with us here. We always learn together, but if not, then please just write that down. This is about yourself. So, your self-awareness in that situation. So if it's a stressful situation, you're finding perhaps that you're crying. It's basic things. You might be crying, you might be, sleeping a lot, you might be finding it hard to get out of bed. Just think about those top 2 things that this thing keeps bringing out in you. Now draw a bigger circle around that. And I want you to think about a different awareness around that one of yourself in that situation. Think about the other people involved in it. And think about, what are you doing right now to get understanding and acceptance from the others involved in that situation. So that could mean leaving the room or counting to 10 and then sitting down to listen. It could mean asking more questions. What are you doing to understand the others that are involved in that situation? And then draw another big circle around that. This could be a yes or no answer for you, but are you able to feel what others are feeling? Because what they may be feeling in that situation might be quite different from you. Are you being able to support others in that situation? And what is it that you're doing to do that? This is no test, so you can just right from the top of your head going, yep, I'm trying to listen multiple times. I go back, I process, I come back, whatever it is, but I'm trying to step into their shoes. And then draw another circle around that. Now, there's clearly some kind of dissonance between you and the other here. What do you do? What practice do you have to balance those multiple perspectives? Now, this doesn't necessarily mean you're now engaging with them again. What is it that you're doing that is helping you process the stress around this by trying to see both sides of the picture? I will tell you right now, I do two things. I will go and write. So I will journal the situation. I'll just kind of go write. And as I do that, I process so that I don't get cornered with my own self, in my own thoughts, in my own emotions. I try to bring it back to the middle. And that's one tactic I use. Now draw another circle around that. And think about what are the factors, like multiple factors in that situation specifically from the outside that are playing into improving the situation or making it worse. Okay. So you may be in dissonance and one of you may have lost a job. So now there's less money. There's less money, but here we are in this play. And so that's making the situation what it is, worse. Or it's adding a completely different angle to that conflict. Another big circle around that. Now think between you and the other in this situation, there could be things like different upbringing, social norms. What is outside of this situation, as I always call, there's a whole terrain. There's this frame that you and I are in conflict, but there's this whole other terrain that's creating context for this. And it could be the fact that, I don't know, I came from a household where everybody was yelling at each other. Maybe they came from a household where nobody talked to each other. So in that last circle you just drew, just jot down, yeah, I know this of this person, or I don't know anything about them, actually, and I haven't sought to understand anything else. But here's where I'm feeling this way because of my own context. So taking a deep breath and just looking at these concentric circles that you have just drawn out for yourself. I would be really grateful if you can, having done that, share with me, now that you've done this exercise, what was challenging? Any thoughts? Like, what was hard for you to do in doing this exercise? Did you find it super easy because you've been at it for a while? I see that people have shared here that something that they have struggled with is not being assertive in their lives. Assertion comes from knowing one's boundaries, something that I learned the hard way. So I'm with you on that. Feeling like I don't deserve it, I am wrong. Thank you for sharing that. That can play in all kinds of ways. So as you went through that exercise, I hear someone says, requires honest self-reflection. Sometimes it's hard to face our struggles. I wish someone could help me with that. Yeah. Anybody else, thoughts from doing this exercise around a situation that you chose? Justifying my stand by talking to those who know about the situation. Right. So seeking support, like getting your army together, right? Feeling like, yep, I'm going to find people that validate my position. They know silence, they're not talking about it, they're making other people feel bad. I wanted to talk openly to resolve it and understand objective versus subjective emotional aspect always coming in the way. So the ability to balance objective and subjective, right? That's almost like the struggle we have with emotion and thought, right? It's our mental and our emotional. Really great feedback. Thank you for sharing there. I'm now going to share again, so we'll see what we just did. I didn't want to kind of tell you what we were doing without you going through this, with a very open mind. So what we just did is looking at these 7 layers of awareness. We're all taught this one, number 1. But there are other layers of awareness that play into every situation. And here's how this helps me. And I want you to take away from this. This is a positive thing that has come for me to understand how I live my life like this. When you can manage your energy successfully, you actually are going to feel this sense of bandwidth to assess situations. You'll always tend to look at big picture. You won't get stuck in that narrow perception of what is happening, because I get beyond myself. So my understanding of myself and accepting others helps me get creative, because it gives me range to say, okay, with this person, I'm going to get creative in this situation. I have options. And you know what? There's some things I could probably do with myself because I can see myself in it. And so I know with this person, I can do this. The I can do is very empowering. I can change this. I will become more quiet here. I will say this here. That gives me a sense of, okay, it starts here with me. And by the way, I have a great toolkit here for myself. So I get creative. I need to learn something. All right, let's get creative about that. When I look at things outside in the second circle about understanding and accepting other people, that's where our stress comes in, right? We're trying to accept them. We're trying to understand them. And so this second circle, which is called social awareness, is where our stress usually stems from. And when I have an awareness of that and a greater ability to accept and understand others, I find that my stress level is far less, because I'm not playing in the space of dissonance or growing dissonance. The third is the empathic circle, which is third circle, you would have said, which was, how are you supporting the others in this situation? Do you even know what they're feeling? Are you able to place yourself in their shoes? Some people do this very naturally. They can just step into other people's shoes and know exactly how to right size support. When I invoke this, and when I learned how to invoke this type of awareness, I found out that I could support others in exactly the way they needed. That was meaningful to them. And that really helped calm things down. The fourth was your interpersonal. This is your fourth circle that you did, which was what are you doing to balance multiple perspectives? This is great when you walk into a room where negotiations going on, you need to build consensus and 10 people in the room. That's where a lot of inner and outer conflict just kind of collides. And when you can do this, where you can balance and listen and stay centered where you are, but be able to balance everyone's perspective as opposed to stay polarized to one corner or two people's corner, then you're learning to manage conflict more effectively. Now, you see what I'm doing here? I'm tying this back to those skill sets we looked at earlier. Situationally, I said, you know what? There could be multiple factors. Maybe, one person lost their job. When you're able to look at situation awareness in a situation, you're actually able to prioritize and make decisions together. So these are tangible outcomes, skill sets, traits, characteristics that we start to breed in understanding these levels of awareness. I won't carry on here, but the point here was that there's a much bigger picture. And this is a structure of that will help you look at your situation that you might have identified for yourself and say, how well am I supporting others? How well am I managing the stress in this? Am I getting as creative as I could be in resolving this issue? Am I prioritizing the right things? And, because of all these things, I think I can adapt better without feeling like somebody robbed me, right? Somebody took some skin off my back. Last week, we showed everybody these 4 types of energies. So if you weren't there last week, here we are. We talked about the 4 types of energy we have. Our needs and wants drive our awareness. So what does that mean? It means that, if you lived in a third world country where light, like power and water and sustenance is an issue, you would stay in Maslow's hierarchy right at the base here, because that's where all your awareness is going to be: food, water, sustainability. But if you got all that, then, people start to move up this chain and start to think about things like belonging and self-esteem. So your needs and wants will drive awareness. So really important to start paying attention to what is it that you want and what is it that you perceive as a need. But our energy is expended in that direction. And we have 4 types of energy. We have physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And I'm going to come back to that case study that I started with you here to say, Jane came to us completely depleted in the space of physical energy. So physical energy has to do with the quantity of energy we cultivate in any given day. She was depleted from an emotional standpoint, but you know what depletion looked like for her? It was just shout, scream, push back, wall this high, like everyone's out to get me. That emotionality, angry at everything, even objects. That affected the quality of her energy. And as a result of that, she wasn't showing a great deal of focus. Her mental faculties were greatly diminished because of those first 2 things. Right? It didn't matter what somebody else's boundary was. She was going to cross it. The negative thinking just prevailed everywhere. It had to do with the fact that, one of her kids had autism. And suddenly she was perceiving every other normal child as the enemy, because she could not get over the fact that her child was struggling this way. Negative framing on everything. So our awareness, this is where I talk about awareness to all of these 4 types of energy, and how it is that we show agility in moving energy from one quadrant to another, and how we keep balance in it. is what energy management truly is. We need awareness before we can change anything. Before I just jump to Q&A and some final thoughts, I shared this last 2 weeks and everybody just loved this slide. You know, all of what I've taught you may seem to you like, wow, this is deep, or wow, this sounds hard, or whatever it is that you're feeling, okay? At night, I ask myself these 6 questions and it keeps me honest. So if you feel like taking a picture of these, please do. Just grab your phone, take a picture of them. I will be also sharing the recording as I do. Is gauging your level of clarity, energy, your rightness to purpose or alignment with your purpose any given day, your ability to channel your energy to what matters most today, your ability to make a positive impact on others, and your ability to show up courageously, most authentically, are the 6 things I look at every day, because it tells me what I'm doing with my mental, emotional, physical energy. And this is what we teach. This is what, my teachers have taught me to do over the years is, you really have to show a very keen sense and a much better skill for expanding your sense of awareness and expanding your sense of perception. Because when you do that, you take the pressure off yourself. When you see a bigger picture, you start to see yourself as a player in a much bigger picture. Suddenly, you're not alone in it, feeling all this pain. You start to see others' pain, and you start to see the collective pain, and then you start to see, all right, this is not so bad. What can we do about it? I wanted to share a story, a personal story around that. But before I do that, I'd love more to spend our last few minutes here just taking some questions from you or comments. Oh, and by the way, yes, if you have attended this session and you feel like this stuff is something I want to explore more. I don't even know where my mental fitness state is or where I'm at with this. If you're here today, one of the things we do is give a mental fitness assessment. I work with you, we talk through a few things, and it will give you a sense, a good gauge of, what might be happening to you energetically and what could be done about it. Okay, so please do feel free to take me up on that. That's the link. You can always book some time with me. I will stop sharing here. And I'm just looking at the Q&A now. So someone shared here, more self-awareness around understanding what the other person is thinking, feeling, going through. That's what you got out of that exercise. Excellent. Somebody found it challenging. My emotions keep coming up, and I don't know how to open the dialogue. And I feel like I'm working on this issue alone. And I'm not clear on the boundaries. And so, as like all of us, our upbringing causes us to perceive this one situation that we've identified for ourselves a certain way. That's one way of looking at it. And we're not taught to look at it many ways. But what we've learned about today helps us push the walls away, sort of just push them gently away, 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 so that you can actually have space. And once you have space, then we teach how to move energy that is needed somewhere specifically to solve things, and not in the point of where you are sort of dissonance, which is where all that energy is going. Supportive feedback makes me feel alone. The lack of. You are not alone in that, I'll tell you. We all, in fact, I will tell you, in my life, I'm for always just like kissing the ground I walk on, say, you know what, we all have teachers and mentors around us. We need them. We need them to be a safe space for us to come to and get that support so that we can grow. My boundaries were always non-existent. Boundaries are still very new to me. Yep, I can confess my boundaries didn't really start getting clear for me until probably my late 30s. It's kind of sad, right? Yeah. I need to have the courage to open a conversation to understand if we can heal. Here's a question. Do you mind explaining again how the perception that you are right or better creates dissonance? Sure. So you're in this conversation with someone. You're having this argument. Just picture you're having some kind of argument. It doesn't have to be a negative thing, or being an argument is not negative. It can be negative, it can be positive, it can be nothing. It can be in the middle. That's the way I look at it. It's an argument, right? I try not to, oh my God, like here I go again. But you will engage in that conversation with a certain perception. Now, that perception is formed by the fact that how long have you known this person? What journey have you taken with them? A long one? A short one? None at all? And then if it's a long one, then that argument will likely become about some of the stuff and the repeated behaviors and patterns you've experienced. That's human nature, to call on all of our experience in this one moment, right? And the problem with that is it just clouds our judgment and it takes our attention away. So that's where the dissonance starts to happen. They come with their limited perception, you come with your limited perception. The issue is between the two of you in that moment. But because you're in your head going, I'm always the more sensitive one, I'm the kind one, I'm the sacrificial one, I forgave last time, whatever, there's the dissonance. The dissonance is happening within yourself because you're trying to solve, but you're hearing all these inner voices going on and you're not listening with presence. So perception can be narrow. The narrower it is, the greater the conflict is like to be. The struggle, the conflict, inner and outer. But if you start to expand your perception, which is through one of the exercise we just did, is start just pushing those walls away and practicing being present, then you won't feel as stressed in that moment because you're sticking with what matters now. I hope that helps. Otherwise, the stress will probably derail the whole conversation and is probably derailing the whole situation at large. So if you feel like, you're stuck and you feel like you're in repeat mode in one aspect of your life or generally, right? Like you keep bumping into the same old problems or reactions, wondering, why do I keep doing this? I can help you see or develop a keener sense of awareness. And at the end of the day, it is that is going to help you conserve energy mentally, emotionally, so that you can set that freed up energy in a direction of being more constructive and positive and freer and happier. So you have that link. You can always have that conversation with me. Any other feedback I'm open to now, I'm open to afterwards, and I love it when people come back and say, I wish we had done this or gone this way with it. Or that's actually how the subject came up, by the way. Last week's webinar led people to come to me and ask me, teach me one way to do this, right? And for me, one of the biggest ways we do this is through our awareness. Right? It's not the easiest lever to move, but it is definitely the most powerful. Okay. And the link is book.meetandbaya.com. I'll share the screen again. And so before I get to the link, how do we find the reference to this webinar series? So I usually will post a recording of this on the socials. It's a social platform where you may have signed up for this. So if you came to me on LinkedIn, I will be posting the recording usually the next day. And then if you came on Facebook or on Insta, I will be posting recordings there. Okay. But remember, you can always DM me, find me, connect with me. you can always direct message me saying, I couldn't find it. Where is it? Right? We can do that. Let me just show you this link just in case you need to write that down. And it's on our website too. I encourage you to go to enviamovement.com. Share screen. So here you go, book.meetenvia.com. It'll give you access to my calendar, pick a time that works for you. And I would be delighted to sit down with you and explore. I love exploring. Curiosity. We can explore together. Other questions? I see the questions coming up. Great session. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad you found that very helpful. Everyone, it's 4:00. I'm going to let you go. Have a beautiful evening wherever you are. And I hope to see you again soon. Thank you. Take care.